This is shocking, absolutely shocking, because right now, behind closed doors, a decision is looming that could reshape the political landscape in a way few people saw coming. And at the center of it all is Pam Bondi, whose fate may now rest entirely in Donald Trump's hands. And if you think this is just another routine political reshuffle, think again. Because what's happening here could have consequences that are not just embarrassing for some, but potentially fatal for others' political careers. To understand how we got here, you have to rewind a bit. Pam Bondi, a longtime Trump ally and former Florida Attorney General, has been one of the most visible defenders of Trump's agenda. She stood by him during controversies, investigations, and moments that would have sunk almost anyone else. Loyalty has been her brand, and in Trump world, loyalty is supposed to be everything. But here's the twist: loyalty only matters until it doesn't. Because in Trump's orbit, alliances are transactional, and when the calculus changes, so does everything else. Now, fast forward to the present moment. Reports are swirling that Trump is weighing a major decision involving Bondi's future role, one that could either elevate her influence dramatically or sideline her completely. Insiders suggest that tensions have been building quietly for weeks, possibly longer. And while nothing has been officially confirmed, the signals are impossible to ignore. Meetings happening behind closed doors, statements that sound supportive on the surface but feel carefully hedged. And perhaps most telling of all, silence where there would normally be loud, public backing. Here, where it gets even more interesting. According to those close to the situation, this isn't just about performance or qualifications. This is about perception. Trump is reportedly concerned about optics, how certain associations play politically at a time when every move is under a microscope. And that puts Bondi in a precarious position. Because no matter how loyal she's been, if Trump believes her presence creates even a hint of vulnerability, that could be enough to trigger a dramatic shift. And that's the part that's frankly staggering, because it reveals just how fragile these alliances really are. As this story unfolds, the potential consequences are enormous. If Bondi is pushed aside, it sends a chilling message to others in Trump's circle. No one is safe. Not even the most loyal defenders. It could trigger a ripple effect, forcing allies to rethink their positions, their strategies, and their futures. On the other hand, if Trump doubles down and backs her publicly, it could signal defiance, a willingness to stand firm despite mounting pressure. Either way, the stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just a personnel decision, it's a signal, a message, a warning. And let's be clear about what's really at play here. This isn't just about Pam Bondi. This is about power, about control, about who stays in the inner circle and who gets cast out when the political winds shift. And if you look at Trump's track record, there's a pattern, one that's impossible to ignore. Allies rise quickly. They gain visibility. They defend aggressively. And then when circumstances change, they're suddenly expendable. It's a cycle, a brutal one. And Bondi may be the next example. But here's the part that should raise eyebrows. Because even as this decision looms, there's a broader question that no one seems to be asking loudly enough. What does this say about leadership, about stability, about trust? Because if loyalty can be discarded this easily, then what does loyalty even mean in this context? And that's where the real story is. Not just the decision itself, but what it reveals about the system surrounding it. So now we wait for the decision, for the announcement, for the moment when speculation turns into reality. And when it does, don't expect it to be subtle. Because if there's one thing we know, it's that when Trump makes a move like this, it's designed to send a message loud and clear. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to stay informed, stay critical, and don't just take headlines at face value. Because stories like this are never as simple as they seem. And just when it seemed like this situation couldn't get more shocking, a new layer is now being exposed, one that makes this entire saga even more complicated and frankly more unsettling. Because behind the scenes, this isn't just about a single decision from Donald Trump. It's about pressure, real pressure, the kind that builds quietly, then all at once. And according to multiple insiders, that pressure is coming from multiple directions at the same time. Let's break this down carefully, because what's emerging now suggests that Pam Bondi's position didn't suddenly become uncertain overnight. No, this has been building, slowly, methodically, and in a way that now feels almost inevitable. There have been whispers, questions about strategy, about messaging, about whether Bondi is still the right person for what comes next. And those whispers, they've turned into conversations. And those conversations, they've now reached the highest levels of Trump's inner circle. But here's the twist that changes everything. Some of the very people who once stood firmly behind Bondi are reportedly the same ones now raising concerns. That's right, the support system that once looked rock solid is starting to crack. And in a political environment like this, cracks don't stay small for long. They spread, fast, and once they do, they become impossible to ignore. Now think about what that means, because if Trump is hearing conflicting advice, some pushing him to stand by Bondi, others urging him to move on, that puts him in a position where any decision carries risk. Back her, and he risks criticism from those who see her as a liability. Cut her loose, and he risks looking disloyal to someone who has defended him at every turn. It's a lose-lose scenario, and yet a decision has to be made. And this is where things start to look not just dramatic, but potentially embarrassing for everyone involved. Because the longer this drags out, the more it exposes internal divisions that were never meant to be public. The more it reveals a system that, despite its outward confidence, may be far more fragile than it appears. And in politics, perception is everything. Once that perception starts to slip, the damage can be incredibly hard to contain. But there's something else happening here that shouldn't be overlooked. Because while all eyes are on Trump and Bondi, others are quietly positioning themselves, waiting, watching, preparing for whatever comes next. Because if Bondi is out, that creates an opening, a vacuum. And in Washington, power vacuums don't stay empty for long. Someone always steps in. The only question is who and at what cost. So now the stakes are even higher than they were before. This isn't just about whether Pam Bondi keeps her place. It's about what happens after, about who gains influence, who loses it, and how that reshapes the entire dynamic moving forward. Because once a shift like this begins, it rarely stops at just one person. And as this pressure continues to build, one thing is becoming painfully clear. Whatever decision Donald Trump makes next, it won't just define Bondi's future. It could redefine the entire structure of loyalty and power within his orbit. And that's where this story goes from interesting to truly consequential. And now, this is where things take a turn from dramatic to potentially fatal for careers. Because what's unfolding behind the scenes is no longer Arabic meme, Arabic gene, Arabic rot, Arabic dal speculation. It's a slow-motion power struggle that's starting to spill into the open. And if you're Pam Bondi, this is the moment where everything you've built could either solidify or completely collapse. Here, what's now being revealed. Donald Trump isn't just passively weighing a decision, he's actively testing reactions. Quietly, strategically, floating ideas, watching who responds, measuring loyalty in real time, and that is a classic move. Because in Trump's world, decisions aren't made in isolation, they're shaped by who falls in line and who doesn't. But here's the shocking part. Some of the responses he's getting are not what you'd expect. Instead of unified support for Bondi, there's hesitation, there's doubt, and in some cases there's outright silence. And in this environment, silence is loud. It's revealing. It's dangerous. Because when allies stop speaking up, it often means they're already preparing for what comes next. Now let's connect the dots. Because this isn't just about internal conversations anymore. There are external pressures building as well, media scrutiny intensifying, political opponents circling, narratives forming. And Bondi, whether fairly or not, is increasingly being positioned at the center of that storm. That makes her not just an ally, but a potential liability. And if there's one thing Trump has shown time and time again, it's that he will not hesitate to cut ties if he believes it protects him politically. But wait here, where the twist comes in. Because even as some voices are pushing Trump to distance himself from Bondi, others are warning him that doing so could backfire in a massive way. Why? Because Bondi isn't just another figure. She's a symbol of loyalty, a public defender who stood firm during some of the most controversial moments. And if she's suddenly pushed aside, it doesn't just raise eyebrows, it sends a message that loyalty is disposable. And that message could ripple far beyond just one person. So now Trump is caught in a balancing act that is as risky as it is revealing. Keep Bondi and risk the narrative that he's ignoring growing concerns. Let her go and risk exposing a pattern that critics have been pointing out for years, that alliances in his circle are conditional, temporary, and ultimately expendable. Either way, the damage could be significant. And make no mistake, people are watching closely. Not just the public, but insiders, strategists, potential allies, everyone who might one day find themselves in a similar position. Because what happens to Pam Bondi right now could serve as a blueprint, a warning sign, a case study in how power is maintained or lost within this orbit. Which brings us to the uncomfortable reality at the center of all this. This situation isn't just unfolding, it's escalating quickly. And with each passing moment, the room for a quiet, controlled outcome is shrinking. The longer this decision hangs in the balance, the more exposed the fractures become, the more visible the tension gets. And once that exposure reaches a certain point, there's no walking it back. So as we move forward, understand this. The decision itself is only part of the story. The real impact lies in how we got here and what it reveals about the system behind it. Because what's happening right now isn't Arabic meme, Arabic gene, Arabicrat, Arabic Dal politics as usual. It's something deeper, something more volatile. And depending on how this ends, it could leave a mark that lasts far beyond this moment. And now we've reached the point where this situation stops being just internal drama and starts having real, unavoidable consequences. Because what was once happening behind closed doors is now bleeding into the public sphere, and the impact is accelerating fast. Here's the reality. The longer Donald Trump delays making a clear decision on Pam Bondi, the more damaging this becomes for everyone involved. Uncertainty in politics isn't neutral, it's corrosive. It creates doubt. It invites speculation. And right now, that speculation is running wild. Allies are talking. Critics are amplifying, and the narrative, it's slipping out of control. But let's focus on Bondi for a moment, because her position right now is not just uncertain, it's incredibly fragile. Every public appearance, every statement, every moment of silence is being dissected, and that kind of scrutiny can be brutal. It can turn even the smallest misstep into something that looks fatal for a political career. And whether it's fair or not, Bondi is now operating under a microscope that magnifies everything. At the same time, Trump is facing a different kind of pressure, one that's just as intense but far more strategic, because every move he makes here sends a signal. Delay too long and he risks looking indecisive. Act too quickly and he risks backlash from within his own base. And in a political environment where perception can shift overnight, that's a dangerous position to be in. Now here, where things take another sharp turn. Because as this tension escalates, new voices are entering the conversation, voices that weren't part of this story before. Political commentators, former allies, even quiet insiders who are now starting to speak out. And what they're saying is raising serious questions. Questions about judgment, about leadership, about whether this entire situation could have been avoided in the first place. And this is where the word embarrassing starts to come into play. Because from the outside, this doesn't look like a controlled decision-making process. It looks messy. It looks reactive. And for a figure like Trump, who has built an image around strength and decisiveness, that perception alone can be damaging. Not permanently, but enough to matter. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the power dynamics are shifting in real time. People are repositioning, distancing themselves, or in some cases, quietly stepping forward to fill a potential void. Because make no mistake, if Bondi is out, someone else is ready to step in. And they're not waiting for an official announcement. They're preparing right now. And here's the part that should not be ignored. Because as all of this unfolds, it's not just about one decision, it's about momentum, political momentum. Once it starts moving in a certain direction, it becomes very difficult to stop. And right now, that momentum feels like it's building toward a breaking point. So what does that mean? It means that whatever happens next won't just resolve the situation, it will define it. It will shape how this entire episode is remembered. Was it a strategic recalibration, or was it a chaotic misstep that exposed deeper weaknesses? Because at this stage, there's no neutral outcome left. No quiet resolution, no easy way out. This has escalated too far. The stakes are too high. The attention is too intense. And as we move into what could be the final phase of this story, one thing is becoming undeniable. The decision Donald Trump is about to make won't just affect Pam Bondi. It will send a message to allies, to critics, and to the entire political landscape about how power is handled when it's under pressure. And now, this is where everything comes into sharp focus, because what started as a behind-the-scenes dilemma is rapidly turning into a defining moment. Not just for Pam Bondi, not just for Donald Trump, but for the entire ecosystem that surrounds them. At this stage, the impact is no longer hypothetical. It's real, it's unfolding, and it's beginning to hit in ways that are impossible to ignore. Because when uncertainty lingers this long at the top, it doesn't stay contained, it spreads. It affects messaging, it affects coordination, it affects confidence. And right now, all three are showing signs of strain. Let's be clear about something. This situation is exposing cracks, not small ones, structural ones, the kind that suggest deeper issues beneath the surface. Because if a key ally like Bondi can go from trusted insider to questionable liability this quickly, then what does that say about the stability of the entire operation? It raises uncomfortable questions, and those questions aren't going away. Now here, where the consequences become even more serious, because political opponents are watching this unfold in real time and they're not staying quiet. They're using it, amplifying it, turning it into a narrative that paints this entire situation as chaotic, as reactive, as lacking control. And whether that narrative is fully accurate or not almost doesn't matter, because once it gains traction, it sticks. And for Trump, that presents a very real risk, because this isn't just about internal loyalty anymore. It's about external perception, about how this decision, or lack of decision, is interpreted by voters, by media, by potential allies who are deciding whether to align themselves moving forward. And if the perception becomes that this is disorganized or unstable, that can have ripple effects that go far beyond this moment. Meanwhile, Bondi is caught in the middle of this storm. And here's the harsh reality. The longer this drags on, the harder it becomes for her to recover, regardless of the outcome. Because even if she ultimately retains her position, the damage may already be done. The doubt, the hesitation, the sense that her standing was ever in question. In politics, that kind of exposure can be incredibly difficult to reverse. But here's the twist that adds another layer to all of this, because in some ways this situation may already be serving a purpose. Think about it. By allowing this uncertainty to play out publicly, Trump is effectively forcing everyone around him to reveal their positions. Who defends Bondi, who stays silent, who subtly distances themselves. It's a test, a pressure test. And the results of that test could influence not just this decision, but future ones as well. And if that's true, then this entire episode becomes even more calculated than it appears. Not just a reaction to pressure, but a way of managing it, controlling it, redirecting it, which would mean that what looks chaotic on the surface may actually be more strategic underneath. But even if that's the case, it doesn't eliminate the risks, because strategy only works if it delivers results. And if this backfires, if the perception of instability outweighs any strategic benefit, then the cost could be significant, not just embarrassing, potentially lasting. So now we're at a crossroads, a moment where the next move matters more than anything that's come before it, Because once that move is made, there's no undoing it, no walking it back, no rewriting the narrative. And that's what makes this so critical, because what happens next won't just close this chapter, it will define it.